Your early experiences matter. They matter a lot. And not because your childhood defines you forever, but because it explains you. Welcome to Life and Love by Design. I'm life and relationship coach Odette Coronel. This podcast is for individuals and couples who are done living on autopilot, who are ready to understand the patterns shaping their relationships, their choices, and their sense of self, and redesign them with purpose and intention. Here, we don't just talk about what's hard. We name what's actually happening beneath it and what to do about it. And if you start recognizing yourself or your relationship in these conversations, know that this is the exact work that I do with my private coaching clients, individuals and couples who are ready for real change. Because a meaningful life and connected relationships don't happen by default. They're designed. So let's begin. Hello and welcome back to Life and Love by Design. I'm your host, Odette Coronel, and this is a podcast where we talk about how to live and love with purpose and intention and not by default. Today, we're diving into a topic that explains so much about the way that we live and we love. Why do some people feel safe in relationships while others are constantly fearing abandonment? Why do some people crave closeness, but then they push it away when they have it? Why do some people choose emotionally unavailable partners over and over again, even when they consciously know that they want something that's healthy? A lot of people think that it's just personality flaws, but it's not. Very often, these patterns started before you even had language, long before you had any logic or any conscious memory. And today we're talking about attachment. And specifically, I'm drawing from one of my favorite books on the topic, which is Why Love Matters: How Affection Shapes a Baby's Brain. And it's by Sue Gerhardt. And this book is fascinating because it bridges neuroscience, developmental psychology, attachment theory, and emotional health. And Gerhardt's central argument and the point of the book is that love is not just emotional, it's actually biological. And that early caregiving literally helps shape the architecture of your brain, especially when it comes to systems that are related to emotional regulation, stress response, empathy, our ability to connect with others. So today, I want to help you understand how these attachment patterns are formed in infancy, how early relationships wire your brain, and how these patterns actually show up in adult relationships. And the most important thing that I want you to understand is that healing is possible. So now let's get into it. One of the most important ideas from the book is that babies are not born emotionally self-sufficient. I think most of us can figure that out. A baby can't regulate themselves. A baby cannot soothe themselves. They cannot organize overwhelming feelings. They're completely dependent on their mother or their caregivers, right? They borrow regulation from the adults in their lives, especially their mom. And that's called co-regulation. So when a baby is feeling hungry or scared or needs a diaper change or is overstimulated or uncomfortable, they completely rely on the caregiver's nervous system to help them feel safe. So think about it. If a baby cries, the caregiver comes to them and they either pick up the baby up, they soften their voice, they make eye contact with the baby, they might rock them, they feed them, they soothe them. And what's happening is not just parenting. This is helping their brains develop. The baby is learning, when I feel uncomfortable or if I'm in distress, someone comes. They're learning my needs matter. Even if I have big feelings, it's okay. I can survive those feelings. They're learning connection brings relief. The world is safe. These are the things that they're learning. And over time, these experiences really become internalized. So then the baby starts building what the attachment theorists call internal working model. And what that is, it's just a blueprint, right? It's just a template for relationships. And that template is what tells them, are other people safe? Can I trust them? They're learning, am I lovable? Are my needs welcomed or am I a burden? And of course, these questions are not something that they're consciously asking themselves. These are all unconscious questions. That's what makes attachment so powerful. You really learn relationship expectations and experiences before you even start dating, way before that. So, attachment theory was originally developed by John Bowley and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth. And what their work found is that babies develop patterns of attachment based on the caregiver's responsiveness. Now, it's not about perfection, it's just responsiveness. And this distinction is really important because you don't have to be a perfect parent. No one can respond to all of their baby's needs. It's just not possible, right? Babies just need caregivers to be good enough. They need to be attuned enough, responsive enough, emotionally available enough. So I want you to really remember that attachment is not built through perfection, but through consistent repair and responsiveness. So if a caregiver misses a cue from the baby, that's totally normal. It's going to happen. If a caregiver gets overwhelmed or frustrated, again, that's normal. It's going to happen. But if there is a repeated repair, so if the baby eventually gets their needs met by the caregiver, even if the caregiver has a moment where they drop the ball or they don't, or they miss the cue, then the child learns resilience as long as there is repeated repair. The issue is chronic patterns. So if the caregiver is chronically emotionally unavailable or chronically inconsistent or chronically unpredictable, chronic neglect, chronic intrusion, all of those things are what eventually shape an insecure attachment style. And there are 4 attachment styles that we're going to talk about, but the one that I want to start with is the secure attachment. And this develops when the caregivers are generally responsive, they're emotionally available, they're predictable, and the child learns, I am worthy of care. Other people are pretty safe, generally speaking. My needs matter. Intimacy is safe. This is the attachment style that we are all hoping to have, a secure attachment. And as adults, securely attached people tend to communicate their needs directly. They can tolerate closeness with a partner. They tolerate conflict without turning it into a catastrophe. And they trust connection and they're able to self soothe more effectively. So, an example of a secure attachment is if your partner, let's say your partner is distant for a day. A securely attached person is just going to think, something must be going on with my partner. I'll check in on them. They're not going to think they probably hate me. We're probably going to break up. I'm so unlovable. So, securely attached partner is able to regulate their nervous system. If you're doing all the right things, you're showing up, you're holding it together, you're being capable and responsible, and yet something in your life and relationships or your marriage still feels off, then give me a few seconds of your time because this message is for you. Relationships don't usually fall apart because of one big event. More often, it's the small everyday moments when we stop being intentional, or we stop really listening, or we stop choosing connection. Those are the things that create distance over time. I work with thoughtful, high functioning individuals and couples who aren't broken, but they're feeling disconnected or misaligned or just wondering how they got here. In my coaching, we slow things down. We try to understand what's happening beneath the surface. We identify the patterns that are shaping your relationships and your choices, and then we intentionally design what comes next. So if you're listening and you're thinking, this feels like me, that's not an accident. I offer a complimentary relationship and life alignment audit. It's a focused 45-minute conversation where I'm going to help you gain clarity and identify what comes next. You can book your session by visiting odettecoronel.com. I would love to connect with you. The second attachment style is an anxious attachment. And this usually develops when the caregiver is inconsistent. So sometimes the caregiver is available, sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they're warm, sometimes they're distracted, sometimes they're emotionally present, but sometimes they feel rejecting. And what the child learns is that connection is unpredictable and they become hypervigilant. So they learn to amplify distress and to catastrophize in order to maintain connection. So as adults, a person with an anxious attachment style might be constantly asking their partner, are you sure you still love me? Or why didn't you text me right back? Or are we okay? They're over analyzing everything. And They fear abandonment. They think that everyone's going to leave them. And they feel a lot of emotional intensity around closeness. So, for example, let's say that you text your partner and they take 4 hours to respond. An anxious nervous system says, they're probably losing interest in me. And this is not because of logic. Logic has nothing to do with it. It's because uncertainty feels dangerous to someone with an anxious attachment. And this is just a nervous system memory. It really has nothing to do with present day reality. The third kind of attachment is avoidant. And this usually develops when caregivers are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, rejecting, or when they're uncomfortable with emotional needs. So then the child learns, my needs are too much. Or they learn, no one is coming. So the child adapts by minimizing their needs. They learn to become self-sufficient. And they do this because it's just a matter of survival. They have to just look out for themselves. They don't trust that anyone is coming to fulfill their needs. So then, as adults, avoidantly attached people may fear dependence. So they want to be super independent, or they struggle with vulnerability, or they feel smothered when their partner is trying to be close to them. They don't feel as comfortable with emotions, and they tend to just intellectualize things and intellectualize emotions. And they tend to withdraw during conflict. So, for example, if a partner says, I feel disconnected from you, an avoidant response might be to withdraw or shut down or get defensive or say that they need space. And it's not because they don't care, it's because closeness activates a threat and intimacy can just feel too overwhelming for them. Now, the fourth attachment is disorganized attachment. And this is really associated with fear-based or chaotic caregiving. The caregiver is both a source of comfort and also it's a source of fear. So they also fear their caregiver. And this really creates an impossible conflict for the child. They need their caregiver for safety, but they also feel unsafe around their caregiver. And this usually happens in families where there's trauma or abuse or addiction or severe emotional unpredictability. So then the adult patterns can look like, craving intimacy, but being afraid of it, and intense relationship chaos, or a real push-pull dynamic, or a lot of difficulty just trusting anyone and feeling chronically emotionally dysregulated. So an example of this might look like, I want closeness desperately until I get it. Then when I get it, I panic, or they sabotage, or they withdraw, or it actually feels painful when they get close to someone. Now, this is where it gets real. People often think that adult relationship issues are about picking the wrong partner. And sometimes, yes, sometimes we keep picking the wrong partners, but often it's deeper. You're bringing your attachment system into every single relationship. And your nervous system is constantly asking, am I safe? Am I chosen? Am I too much? Will I be abandoned? And this is why relationships are such powerful mirrors. They activate old emotional material, not because your partner is your parent, but because intimacy awakens attachment styles. So, for example, a classic dynamic is avoidant with an anxious partner. And the anxious partner seeks closeness, but then the avoidant partner feels pressured and starts to withdraw. So what happens? The anxious partner starts to push even harder, and the avoidant partner withdraws even more, and it becomes a cycle. They both feel understood, and then that cycle just continues to escalate. And it's not because either one of them is bad, it's just that their nervous systems are speaking completely different survival languages. Another common dynamic is a secure partner with an insecure partner. And when I say insecure partner, it could be anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. This can feel very disorienting because the secure partner knows how to communicate clearly, but the insecure partner doesn't trust it. So, for example, if a secure partner says, I care about you, but I kind of need some alone time tonight. If they have an anxious partner, then the anxious partner hears rejection. If they have an avoidant partner, the avoidant partner hears a demand. So it's the same event, but it's completely different nervous systems. And here is the good news. Patterns are not life sentences. You learned your attachment pattern in a relationship, and you can also heal attachment styles relationally. This is sometimes called earned secure attachment. And healing happens through self awareness, nervous system regulation, corrective emotional experiences, healthy relationships, whether it's with your life partner, that's a perfect opportunity to heal, or with other important relationships in your life. Healing also happens with coaching or therapy and consistent emotional safety. And when you start becoming more securely attached, you start noticing, oh, wow, this actually wasn't about the text message at all. This was my abandonment wound, right? Being activated. Or this is my nervous system interpreting distance as danger. That awareness creates choice, and that choice creates change. And you learn how to stop automatically reenacting your childhood. So I want you to ask yourself, what did love feel like growing up? What did you have to do in your home in order to feel loved and accepted? Was love predictable or was it unpredictable? Could I have needs safely? Was emotional expression welcome? What did I have to do in order to feel connected? Did I have to perform? Did I have to have perfect grades? Or did I have to disappear and withdraw? Or did I become hyper independent? Maybe I stayed small, right? Because those strategies may still be running your relationships today. So you want to start with being aware. Where did this come from? Where did I learn this? And my biggest takeaway from Why Love Matters, again, is this: your early experiences matter. They matter a lot. And not because your childhood defines you forever, but because it explains you, it gives you context. There's a reason for the way that you are. It helps you understand why love may feel activating or scary or intoxicating or overwhelming or soothing, whatever it is that you're feeling, right? When you understand your patterns, then you begin to change them. And then you can create relationships by design and not by default. And of course, that's what this podcast is all about. So if this episode resonates with you, please share it with someone who you think might need to hear it. And make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, like the episode. And if you are ready to understand your own relationship patterns on a deeper level, then I invite you to book a complimentary consultation with me, and the link is in the show notes. And until next time, remember that your life and your love are yours to design. If today's episode described you or your relationship, then this is your moment. You don't need more information. You need a new way of living, choosing, and relating. And that's the work I do with individuals and couples. If you're ready to stop repeating the same patterns and start designing your life and relationships intentionally, visit the link in the show notes and book a complimentary relationship and life audit. Remember, your life and your love are yours to design.